Live. Yay! Welcome everyone to the Nourished Sensitive Garden for this wonderful live stream conversation that we're going to be having. This is our very first Blooming with conversation. What is that? So this is something I have thought about since really the many months ago when I was dreaming up events and things that we could run at the Nourished Sensitive. And I thought to myself, what about having like a TEDx style, coffee chat style, like fireside chat conversation with sensitive leaders, sensitive healers, and just friends and members of our collective to come together around different interesting conversations. So that's what we're doing here today with this Blooming with conversation. And my very first guest is one of my closest friends, my sister, Marina Biggio of Cosmic Marina, LLC. And I'm just so excited to have you here. This is like a dream come true.
Oh, same, Leah. I feel honored to be one of your first guests.
Yay, we're gonna have so much fun today. The conversation for today is really, we're gonna center this around the concept of self-alchemy. And we're gonna get into some really interesting, deep conversation with Marina bringing her expertise in this area, about inner care and self-healing for sensitive people. We're gonna talk about the 4 self-healing skills that are essential for thriving as a sensitive human. And I'm going to invite Marina to reflect on that, um, and just share some of her insights over the years as somebody who helps sensitive people with their healing journey. Um, so, this space today, as we settle into the conversation, is for sensitives who have a rich inner world, but who struggle to kind of make space for that inner nourishment. And that's what we're inviting people into today. And that's going to be the energy of our conversation. So, without further ado, let's introduce you, Marina. Can you share for anyone that's listening right now who's meeting you for the first time, whatever's coming through and what's the heart of your work? And yeah.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for having me, Leah. Um, wow, it's hard to kind of distill everything down into a bite-sized chunk. But I would say I'm definitely a sensitive person. I always have been. I think anyone who knows me would describe me as highly emotional and intuitive. And yeah, I think I've just throughout my life been learning what works for me and trying to take good care of myself. And then I've also just been really passionate about passing that knowledge down to other people who feel similarly. And then in my work, I love coaching people to find their own solutions, their own wisdom, and just asking those questions to help people inquire in themselves and figure out their own unique kind of recipe for self care.
Yeah. So for those who are just joining, welcome Katie, the sensitive creative. We're so glad that you're here. Marina is the founder of Cosmic Marina, LLC, that's based in the North Conway area of New Hampshire. And she is not only one of my best friends, but she is a spiritual growth guide. She does tarot readings through her business. She is an expert on energetic boundaries and grounding. And she's just a really wonderful human, a friend to all, shines her everlasting light into the world all the time, and everyone just loves Marina. So that's who you're meeting today, and that's who you're spending time with today. And as for me, I am the founder of the Nourished Sensitive, which has just become a magazine, which is pretty cool. And this conversation today is really our first time that I'm inviting a member of our community into a conversation. Rena, how long have you been a member of the Garden, the Nourished Sensitive Collective?
Since the conception, I don't even know how long has it been? A couple years now? Yeah, so from the very beginning, and it's been really nice seeing it grow from kind of just an idea into a full-fledged community and still growing. So I'm so excited to see how things sort of take off in the next year.
Yay. And Marina is going to be facilitating a bi-monthly circle that we're going to talk about towards the end of today's conversation. But I want to ask before we get into it, what drew you to want to like facilitate your own circle inside the Nourished Sensitive Collective?
Well, I think it's always been my personality. I just, whenever I'm excited about something, I'm always that person who wants to be on the rooftops, kind of shouting it out, being like, everybody, you have to come try this, you have to come see this. So I think it's partially just that side of my personality. Also, a little selfishly, I need accountability. I am also, part of this audience that needs this. So not only do I get to share it with others, but I also get to enjoy it for myself. I'm really just one of your peers, and we, all get to kind of meet together and do this work. Um, yeah, and I have a feeling I'm going to learn from a lot of you guys who are attending. So it's a little bit for me as well. But also, I just love to see how excited people are and how just eager people are to do this kind of work. I'm seeing it more and more. Just people are like ready. They're ready to look inwards and do this work. And so, what better way to do it than in this kind of
Mhm.
community? Yeah.
Yay! Could not have said it better myself. And for those listening, welcome, Laura. I saw that you just joined to our conversation. Marina brings a lot of experience to facilitation around healing. She has hosted many circles in the North Conway community, moon circles, healing circles, women's circles. She's also been a fervent attendee of those kinds of things. So she's very experienced with this and she's a natural at teaching. Um, so we're so excited to have her, and we're going to get into our conversation for today. So the topic for today is self-alchemy, which is another way of saying self-healing. It's a spiritual skill. It's a kind of practice that we engage in to grow ourselves spiritually. And we call that self-alchemy. Now, the word alchemy, this is a kind of an ancient word. And it basically refers to the practice in medieval times of attempting to turn basic metals like iron into gold. In more modern terms, alchemy just refers to taking what is heavy or dark or hard in our lives, our shadow, whatever you want to call it, and turning that into metaphorical gold, right? So self-empowerment and healing and joy and whatever good things come out of working on ourselves and going into the mucky, messy work of growing spiritually and growing as a person, whether that's doing therapy or other types of healing modalities. So I want to invite you into that conversation, Marina. When you think of self alchemy and all the things that you've done in your healing work, what comes up for you and what does that word mean to you?
Yeah, so it's definitely a very powerful word. And like you said, has ancient roots and can be applied to a lot of different things. I think for me, I like to think of shadow work specifically, which is one of the kinds of healing that we'll be doing in the community. And to me, shadow work is shining a light on, like you said, those kind of murky areas inwardly. These are the areas of ourselves that are often uncomfortable to sit with. We don't really like to look at them, but this really beautiful thing happens when we shine that light on them. We start to understand them. We realize that they're not as terrible as we thought, that we're actually way more capable of holding space. And they often transform, when we hold these aspects of ourselves with compassion and with love, they sort of take on a new life. And yeah, it's really, it's deep work, which is why we're doing it in community so that we're supporting each other. But it's also just really fun and powerful and helps us understand ourselves.
Yes. Do we have a blue boy jumping
Yeah,
on the live stream?
he is also a very sensitive little boy, and we have a plow coming in. So if it gets distracting, let me know and I can pop him in a different room, but we'll see how it goes.
Is he distracting you? Do you want to go ahead and do that real quick?
Yeah, let me grab him and that way we can zone in and you can share a little bit more about the self-alchemy. I'll be right
Okay. Hi, Laura. Hi, Katie. It's good to have you both here. I'm not sure if you can comment or write a message. This is the first time I'm doing a live stream, but welcome. And we'll just give Marina a second to get back. If you can leave a comment, tell us where you're joining from. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia. Marina's in near North Conway, New Hampshire. Okay, welcome back.
Oh,
So I
good.
wanted to, awesome. I wanted to ask you as a follow-up question, how do you see it self-alchemy or self-healing work as different from your kind of run-of-the-mill self-improvement or like fixing yourself?
Oh man, that's a good question. Well, I definitely did the self-improvement, fixing yourself route for a long time. And it doesn't really, I mean, you can achieve a lot of great things, but that inner peace, that feeling of wholeness, of enoughness, of just loving yourself, it will never come from that path, you know? It doesn't mean you can't be ambitious, you know, like I love an ambitious person, but having this self alchemy practice is really about not becoming a better person necessarily, but just a more um, aligned person, more aligned and centered in who you are, more self-accepting of who you are. And that often will actually help you to um, move forward in life, right? Instead of chasing something, it's funny how when you start to just fully accept yourself and come home to yourself, it often is very motivating and inspiring. And all of a sudden, you end up kind of finding yourself at those milestones you were always chasing, if that makes sense.
Yes, that absolutely does make sense. And I want to add to this the idea that this work happens in a cyclical, seasonal kind of way. Another way of saying that is healing happens in layers. You self-improvement is much more linear. It's like, okay, I have a goal and I'm gonna do this, this, and this until I reach the goal. But healing or self-alchemy is more cyclical. You say, okay, sometimes you set an intention in, let's say, the fall, and you're like, I want to get better at being patient with myself, or I want to grow in this area. It might not change right away. You might have to go to something like our biweekly circles and work on it a little bit and use your tools and talk to different people. And then over time, you start to notice like, oh wow, I am being more patient with myself. I am taking it easier. I'm speaking more compassionately to myself than I did before. And then you might hit a season where you're like, man, I'm being kind of hard on myself. Like you go through these cycles. And so self alchemy is really different from that traditional linear self improvement that most of us have been exposed to. Do you have anything to add to that, Marina?
Yeah, yeah, I love that. It's cyclical and it's very layered. So every time you kind of let go of one layer, you're like, wow, now there's this other thing that I'm noticing that I wasn't there before because it was kind of covered up.
Exactly. And I wanted to tie this back before we get into the four self healing skills. I want to tie this back to the 9 elements of nourishment framework, which is a signature framework I created to um, help us make sense of all the different elements that we need to thrive as sensitive people and neurodivergent people. And the most relevant element in this conversation is element 9, which is spiritual growth. We have other elements that pull into this conversation, but that one is kind of our grounding element. And spiritual growth is what Marina and I have been talking about. It's a cyclical, non-perfect, non-linear, gentle paced experience of growing in our spirit and growing in our spirituality and our knowledge of ourselves. Um, so that's kind of just tying that back to something grounded and rooted. Spiritual growth, element 9 in the 9 elements of nourishment framework. Okay, so let's get into the I want to call it the meat of the conversation. Recently, we put out an article in the magazine about 4 self-healing skills that all sensitive people need but no one teaches us. Like we should be taught this in school, kind of thing. And those 4 skills, we're going to go through each of them, but I'll name them up front. The first one is emotional processing. There are different words we could use to describe this, but this is just well, I'll go through them. Let me name them and then I'll go through them. So the first is emotional processing. The second is energetic boundaries. The third is nervous system grounding. And the fourth is self compassionate inquiry. Now, those are not hierarchical. You could explore any one of those and they would all be powerful for your self healing. And none of them is above or more important than the other. They're just all skills that we have to be practicing. And they help us thrive as sensitive people when we practice them continuously with love and with gentleness and in community with an experienced facilitator. So let's go through each of them. So skill 1, emotional processing. This is the skill of slowing down when we have a feeling that comes up for us, to name what's happening and to understand, maybe not understand right away, but just to be able to kind of notice and locate that feeling in our bodies. So, for example, you're feeling sad and you start to locate that feeling in your body. Maybe it's like a heat behind the eyes, like that I'm about to cry kind of feeling. When you can notice the feeling in the moment, then you can sit with it and process it so that that emotion doesn't get built up and start to affect you and create, heaviness in your life. So this is a foundational skill for sensitive people. And this doesn't come just from me. It does come from my own personal experience, but this is grounded in work from uh, educators like Carla McLaren. She is a favorite in the Nourished Sensitive Collective. She wrote a book called The Art of Empathy and several other books. There's another one called The Language of Emotions. And she really talks about just the art of working with our feelings and all the layers and nuances that our feelings are trying to communicate to us. So this first skill of emotional processing is grounded in that work. So before we get into skill 2, Marina, why would you say emotional processing is foundational for sensitive people or neurodivergent people?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, obviously, emotional processing is important for everyone. Processing our emotions is something that we need to be able to do just to feel good in ourselves and to function. But I think for sensitive people, we tend to have very complex layering of many emotions. And we will even pick up on other people's emotions as well. We tend to be that person who just feels the energy of the room. And because of that, we just have a lot going on emotionally. We might have a day where we are at one of our lowest lows and also one of our highest highs, and all in one day. It's a little bit of a roller coaster ride. So I think it's really empowering to understand those emotions, to practice noticing them and being with them. I also think sensitive folks tend to cope with their overwhelm through dissociating. And so learning about our emotions also helps us to reconnect with our bodies, which,
Mhm.
might feel a little uncomfortable at first, but allows us to be so much more grounded in ourselves and ultimately just to feel more at peace with ourselves.
So well said. You really like painted a picture of that. I don't think I have anything to add.
Mhm.
So wonderful. And how do you imagine practicing this skill in your circle that you'll be hosting?
Yeah, so there'll be a balance between kind of individual co-working, like we'll be doing a little journaling on our own, and of course that will bring up some emotions. And we'll have that kind of share after journaling where if you feel called to share, I'll help you process that emotion that you're going through. At the same time, we will be doing some activities together where we'll be doing some guided meditations to notice what's coming up in our bodies, and we'll just have some conversations about it. For instance, say you have an emotion like shame coming up in your space throughout your day to day. the circle is a great place to bring it to the group and say, hey, I've been noticing this emotion. What do you guys think? Do you have any ideas? And then, of course, you won't be given advice unless you ask for it specifically. So if you would just like to be heard, that's fine too.
Yeah, yeah, that sounds wonderful. I can't wait. For those listening, I've been hosting our circles since like June of 2024 or something, and now bringing Marina in to host a circle is so wonderful because I get to just attend. Okay, so let's talk about the next skill in our four self-healing skills, self-alchemizing skills. The second one is energetic boundaries. So when I don't know about you, but when I think about boundaries, when I was new to boundaries and understanding what they are, I kind of played them in my head like it's a confrontational conversation or it's just learning how to say no or tell someone, like set a limit with someone. And that always felt very overwhelming for me, especially as an autistic person, because I felt like I had to like memorize a script and it was just a lot of work. But I've learned over time that before you even get into that practice of being more direct and assertive with your needs and your requests, it's helpful to start with just energetic boundaries. So noticing the difference between me and another person, or me and another being, whatever it is. Um, as sensitives, we tend to absorb the emotions in our environment, and people around us. And so energetic boundaries is just that practice of distinguishing my energy from someone else's energy and really picking up on those subtle cues of this is mine, this isn't mine. And that skill, when practiced over time, helps you get better at noticing when you need to set an actual boundary and say, oh, I've picked up something from my boss's desk that doesn't belong to me. Let me set a boundary with them. Maybe that's a vocal boundary about your needs with regard to deadlines or something, right? So this is a more foundational skill under that, uh, the types of boundaries we're taught to set. Um, so Marina, what do you have to add to that, and how do you think we can approach learning about energetic boundaries?
Yeah, so I definitely agree with what you said. A lot of times, interpersonal boundaries and that nonviolent communication can be really overwhelming. It's still obviously essential to be able to verbalize your boundaries, but oftentimes, sensitive folks are already just getting bombarded with so much energetic information that that itself can be overwhelming. It's as simple as your partner had a bad day at work, and as soon as they get home, the energy in the house changes, and we don't even realize it's happening. So I think just understanding the way that we're affected by energy can be a relief, honestly, of like, oh my gosh, this isn't me. Like, this is actually just the way I experience the world. And it can actually be really fun. So, I think boundaries are often seems a little bit like stressful. But when you're talking about energetic boundaries, it feels sort of magical and fun because we're doing visualizations, we are coming up with metaphors, we're working with energy, and I think that's really fun. So I think it can be super empowering for sure. And a lot of times, once you get the energetic boundaries down, it makes, like you said, those kind of more direct and verbal boundaries a little bit easier.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought up nonviolent communication. That's probably another essential healing skill is learning how to communicate without violence or aggression. Well,
Mhm.
that's a conversation for another time.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, yeah. So I love how you also mentioned that it can be fun because we need that when we're doing boundary work. We need it to be fun. We need it to produce a little bit of dopamine, feel kind of glimmery and magical, because that helps us integrate it more. Can you share with our listeners how you make this stuff fun? Like, what are some things you do in your day-to-day life, little rituals?
Yeah, oh my gosh. Well, I think just like, I think the mind is very powerful. You know, our intentions are powerful. What we visualize is powerful. And I believe that those intentions can affect the energy around us and the world around us. So I don't know that this is like fun, but the first one coming to mind is I had a situation with someone where I could feel, even when I was home, in my home, I could feel their energy. They were just sending a lot of energy towards me that was making me feel uncomfortable. And so, what I ended up doing, and again, this is the fun part, you get to be playful and imaginative. So, you get to kind of create your own like ritual around it. And so I decided I would take this rose that I had and I put it in my compost. And I actually will tell clients to try this because it works super well. I put the rose in my compost and I said a little prayer and I just said, any energy directed at me from this person, I'm now rerouting it, almost like rerouting a plane, little reroute. And it's now going to this rose in my compost pile, doing it with love, you know, and I really felt it felt so good to have power in that situation, even in this passive way where I wasn't having to confront her, but I was protecting my peace and my energy. So, yeah.
I love that visual. You know me and my roses.
Mhm.
Um, how do you see us working on this in circle?
Yeah, so I think we'll definitely use the workbooks as kind of our grounding foundation because we have these experts that really have been, you know, practicing this and passing this knowledge down. So we'll be doing a lot of their exercises. And at the same time, I think I would love for people to bring things to group that we can work on together. So, you know, doing some boundary role play is a dream of mine because, like you said, sometimes it feels like you're having to remember the script and it's just like a little bit stressful. So, what if, you know, you could bring your boundary altercation to this to this group and we could practice together? Or we can do some of that, you know, energetic work where we're creating our own imaginative rituals to protect our own energy. And sometimes it's as simple as, you know, that protective bubble and just practicing imagining our energetic field and what is that like? What's going on with our energy?
Yeah. Before we move on to the next skill, if there's anyone listening to this who's saying like, wow, I've never even like this is blowing my mind. Like I've never practiced these kind of skills or these spiritual concepts of like creating a bubble or visualizing or anything that Marina's talked about. Don't worry. It's okay. You don't have to really be good at this. That like we were talking about at the beginning, healing happens in layers. You learn things, you pick up things over time. And you can always, if it's not working for you, you just discard it. You just say, that's not resonating with me or that doesn't fit my life. So the idea is to just find the tools that work well for you. Oops, I
Can I
lost
add to
my
that, Leah?
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I if anyone who knows me knows I have these 2 sides. I have this very, like, grounded, practical engineer side, and then I have the magical, spiritual, woo-woo, psychic stuff. So you can just pick and choose, you know, and it's okay if you have no idea what I'm talking about. Just bring your curiosity and, yeah, take what resonates and leave what doesn't, definitely.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Marina actually has an engineering degree. So she's pretty cool. She's one of those people who's like a witchy engineer.
Yeah, people are
So
like, "What do you do?" I'm like, "I'm a psychic tarot engineering."
hyphen, hyphen, hyphen.
Yeah, all the things.
Okay, so let's ground the conversation into the next skill, which is nervous system grounding, number three. And this is something that both of us have had to learn and practice over time. I am very ADHD. Grounding does not come naturally to me. I'm like a ping pong ball or like a rainbow inside a tornado. I'm just all over the place naturally. But I have been learning this essential skill more and practicing it. And so, what is nervous system grounding? So, if you imagine a lot like a wire, like an electrical wire that connects into, let's just say the ground. And that electrical wire gets struck by lightning. That electrical pulse is going to go into the ground. It's going to pass through the wire and into the ground, and it's not going to make the wire explode. Well, maybe it would, depending on the voltage of that lightning bolt, but correct me on my engineering knowledge. But basically, grounding is when we allow energy to move through us and stabilize us instead of creating like a meltdown situation. Um, and there are many ways to do this, and Marina, I want to leave this open for you to explain. Um, so what would you say are some examples of grounding, and what does that look like maybe in your own life or with your clients?
Yeah, so the cool thing about grounding is there's sort of endless ways to practice grounding. So it's basically like this long menu of activities that you can try and see what works for you. But yeah, I think everyone is really different. For me, I think grounding is just this practice of checking in with myself. So it's sort of similar to, if I'm hungry, my body is saying, Marina, you're hungry, you need food. I think a similar thing starts to happen with grounding once you notice, what being ungrounded feels like, what being grounded feels like. So after learning about some of these things, you'll notice, oh, I'm very ungrounded right now. And just compassionately holding space for that. It's normal that I'm feeling ungrounded. There's something going on here. I don't need to fix it. I can be with it. But we can also do some self-care and some nourishment. So for me lately, always breath. Breath is such like a kind of straight and to the point grounding practice. If you want everyone to take a nice big breath right now, I feel like that would feel so good.
Into the belly, extend your exhale. Imagine the energy flowing out of your feet.
Yeah. And already my energy is like, just sinks a little bit lower. Um, I'm a big believer in visualization, like I said. So I love doing the roots visualization. I was doing that with a friend recently, and we were visualizing her roots growing into the ground. And she said her roots felt like one of those plants that just kind of goes shallow into the ground and then pops up somewhere else.
Yeah.
Which I totally resonate with. Sometimes grounding feels like taking this beach ball and trying to push it underwater in a pool where it just doesn't want to ground. And that's totally fine. I would say the majority of us sensitive people feel that way because our bodies are just feeling so much. And so it can be overstimulating to be grounded in our bodies. So, a lot of this work goes together, right? When we do the emotional processing, we start to feel a little more grounded. Um, Also just going for a walk in the woods, like, will completely change how I feel. So, yeah, we'll talk about all different kinds of activities to try, and eventually you'll have your own little special toolkit of things that really work for you.
I love that. Mine is going to the cemetery. I find them so quiet and so peaceful. It's a challenge though, and I want to name this for any neurodivergent sensitive people here, especially if you're ADHD like me, so autism plus ADHD. My challenge with grounding is that sometimes I don't want to. I'm loving my stimulation. I'm loving the energy that I'm in where I'm not grounded and I'm like having a lot of fun. And I'm like, no, I don't want to ground right now. Like a little kid who's like being told like it's time to leave the playground. So I've been learning to try to just find the pleasure in grounding, in the coming back down and like really resting in, okay, I'm in my body and I'm just here and I'm not doing anything and I'm not seeking any stimulation or dopamine. So I will need some practice around that. Take notes, Marina. All right, let's get into let me ask. Oh no, you already answered the question of how we'll do this in circle. Are there any other tools that you'll bring into that? I know you have your guide on grounding.
That's a good question. I think Carla McLaren's emotional work will be really helpful. But I think mostly we'll just be doing some guided meditations. And I think once we get into group, we'll intuitively know what direction we want to take in things. We can always bring new resources in. One resource I might add is Clear Home, Clear Heart by Jean. She does energy clearing, and Um, yeah, I'll probably have after some meetings just a little open time for anyone who wants to stay and just receive a little energy clearing because that has helped me so much. A lot of times I'll do the clearing and after I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I'm in my body. Wow."
Yeah.
So, we'll have some space for that too if anyone's interested.
Lovely. Thank you so much for offering that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get into number 4. And this one, if there was one that I would pick as potentially the most important, it would be this one, and that is self-compassionate inquiry. This is like the foundational skill. If you don't have self-compassion, it's very hard to do any kind of self-healing work. Um, and maybe you can get into that, Marina. But this skill, as sensitive people, we tend to be very self-aware. We tend to have like therapist level clarity over our weaknesses and the things that we're working on. And we tend to be very deep processors. And so when hard things happen, like we make a mistake or our friend's mad at us, we can process that deeply. And sometimes we can turn that in on ourselves. And so we may not be as practiced at the act of self compassion and this, not just the act, but the skill of self-compassion and self-kindness. How to interrupt our shame spirals gently, or even prevent ourselves from falling into shame spirals, which would be nice. Um, so what does this mean to you? How has this shown up in your own healing journey, self-compassion?
Well, I was like, I'll tell you my whole life story. No.
Exactly.
Yeah, I always, I think people label me as a very kind person to others. And so you would think I'd be very kind to myself. And I've always, felt like I really liked myself. I'm like, I like who I am. But then I've had these life experiences where I really was, failing at things and just like not performing in the way that I did when I was younger. And all of a sudden I'm like, wow, like, my mind is, like, very mean to me sometimes, and so it's kind of I had this revelation of, like, wow, I don't actually practice self-compassion, and so, yeah, it's been really pivotal for me, and I think so many people are needing this kind of practice, and, yeah, and, I could go down a rabbit hole with this, so I'll try to keep it brief, but I think a lot of times lack of self-compassion is just hyper defensiveness, A lot of times that voice that feels hypercritical, overbearing, and judgmental is trying to keep us safe. So it's really
Mhm.
not about, shaming ourselves into being kind. It's actually just noticing that really protective part and hearing those needs and sort of some self-mothering as well, and just kind of mothering those fearful parts. So
Mhm.
it's very, very powerful work. And yeah, oh my God, I'm like tearing up just thinking about it. It's going to be so powerful to do together.
Yes, this has been the biggest one for me on my personal healing journey. Um, Really, it was a concept introduced to me by my therapist who I worked with for many, many years. And he's a psychologist and introduced me to the work of Tara Brach, who is a meditation teacher and a psychologist. And she wrote the book Radical Compassion. And I've been to some of her meetups and her circles, and I've listened to her podcasts for years. And it was the most transformative thing for me because without getting into the nitty-gritty, just I grew up with trauma. And when you experience trauma as a sensitive person, it can be really hard to access self-love and self-compassion. So a big part of healing from that and doing that self-healing work is learning how to tap into that. You said it as that motherly presence. That took me a while um, to get there, but getting to a point where I could nurture and mother myself, oh my gosh, it just changed everything. So I'm very excited for you to guide us through this, Marina. I agree it's going to be powerful. And it's so important that we do that in community because shame, shame is a big and heavy emotion, and it can be so helpful to have a community that you can trust and is safe to help hold that with you.
Mhm.
How do you imagine us kind of practicing self-compassion in your circle?
So I think it will naturally weave into all of the topics that we talked about. Shadow work, the first step is always self-compassion. You know, we don't want to dive into our shadow without that sort of like almost like a life raft, you know? Self-compassion is like this kind of anchor, the safety net that we take with us through shadow work. Emotional processing also brings in self-compassion. So I think regardless of whether or not we are focusing on self-compassion, it's a tool we're going to be developing throughout all of this. We'll also be mostly using Kristen Neff, Dr. Kristen Neff, a lot of her work because she's an expert in self-compassion and has been studying self-compassion, and she has a wonderful workbook that we can work through. Um, yeah, and really, you know, one of the core values of this group is being empathetic and compassionate towards our other group members. So really every day we show up, we're going to be practicing being compassionate to the other people in our group. And those peers are going to be reflecting that compassion back to us too.
I love this. I can't wait for this circle. Um, Before we get into, so we're going to get into now just what this circle is, introducing you to the concept of sanctuary circle in the Nourished Sensitive Collective. But before we do that and kind of formally invite you in, I want to make a point about why sensitive people need relational spaces to do inner work. Um, when I mentioned earlier that I worked with a therapist for many years, he's a psychologist who specializes in relational psychotherapy, which is essentially recognizing the importance of human relationship and healing and having a sense of belonging and having unconditional positive regard, which comes from the father of person-centered therapy, Dr. Carl Rogers. Having unconditional positive regard in a space where we are completely accepting of others and in relationship with them, that deepens the work and it also allows it to do its work within you as you're practicing these skills. And I think this gets even more powerful when you bring sensitive people together. When sensitive people are relating to other sensitive people, that is that can be so transformative because we just live in a world where sensitivity is not always honored or held space for or seen and heard. So our sanctuary is a space for that, for sensitive people to come together around growth and around healing, and in relationship. So, Marina, I want you to maybe add your thoughts to that. Why do you think sensitives often try to do self-healing alone, and what changes when they're in relationship or in community?
So much to say about this. Yeah, well, I think a lot of sensitive people, not all, but many can relate to sort of like the teacher's pet energy, like the high achieving academic energy. And a lot of times that comes with this sort of like need to prove that you can do it by yourself, you know? Like I think of my teenage self, she was like, if I have any help, then like I didn't really achieve it, you know, I didn't really do it. So that's like the extreme energy, I think, that we're looking at here. But I think sometimes we are just solitary creatures, you know. Some of us just really enjoy our own company and we end up on this path of, you know, self-healing and not necessarily having these communities to support us. I think also just the modern lifestyle we're living in is very much these little islands, you know, where we think we're connected because we have our phones, but in reality, we're not having as much of that um, communal time together in each other's energy, being held and supported. So I think everyone is really needing this energy, this sort of like communal space. And then when it comes to, again, self-compassion, Dr. Kristen Neff, she actually found that one of the most important aspects of compassion is shared humanity, which basically just means like if you're going through something, you're not alone. Like there's someone out there that's also experiencing it or has experienced it. And so we talked about that feeling of shame, right? How it can be so heavy. But having someone else there with you saying, I see you, I hear you. Also, I might even understand what you're experiencing. I've been there as well, can be super healing in so many different ways.
Thanks for sharing your thoughts on that. I'm
Yeah.
very, very it's gonna be such a beautiful space. And how would you describe, because you've been a member of our circle since the
Mm.
beginning, how would you describe the connection within our circle?
Oh, I love it. Well, I was thinking about that a little bit today before getting on this call, and I think it's this really lovely dichotomy of like depth and lightness as well. So we're talking about these very like deep transformative things. We're doing very deep inner work, but at the same time, we're doing it with this sort of like playful, lighthearted energy of just kind of like kids in the school playground, like playing with this whole experience. So yeah, there's this depth, there's this lightness, and I think this friendship, like everyone is welcome, and it's not like a clique or anything. As soon as you join, like you're part of the group, like welcome. You're already automatically part of the space, and yeah, everyone brings their own gifts and their own perspective, and yeah, it's just like a little slumber party. I love it.
Yeah, and I'll add that we know each other's lives. In our last circle, one of our longtime members, Lynn, was talking about bringing her chairs in the winter, and how people in San Diego don't have to bring their chairs in for the winter. And we catch up, we know each other's lives. Oh, how's this going? Um, Marina, how was your move from your office space? She just recently moved out of her office space. So it's not just a place for working on ourselves or doing healing. It's a place to actually like touch in with each other and see how life is, which is so rare these days for so many people, especially since the pandemic. Um, so let's kind of ground this conversation in before we invite you into the circle. Who is this circle for? So I started this circle as part of the Nourished Sensitive in June of last year. We started running these groups every 2 weeks, and it was really just a small core of us. It was Marina, it was our friend Brooke, um, there was a couple other women who were coming at the time. Now we go through seasons, so some of those women have left. They may come back at some point. That's why we keep the circle really open. But we've kind of had that core group for a little while of me and Marina and a couple others. And those folks really ground our group because they were part of it since the very beginning. Um, but who is this for? Who are we inviting into our little core sanctuary group? If you are highly sensitive, if you identify in that way, like I'm an HSP, or maybe you don't identify with the HSP term and you just generally feel like you're a sensitive person, you're welcome. Maybe you don't identify with the term sensitive. Maybe your term is empath or intuitive or creative, whatever word you want to put to sensitivity, you're welcome. And this is also a space for neurodivergent people. So I am a neurodivergent person. I have ADHD and I have autism level 1. Marina, I don't know if you would define yourself that way, but we definitely have some, what's the word? Differently wired folks in our group.
My friend says neuro spicy.
Neurospicy. Yes, I think that's the fun term these days. So if you are neurodivergent, you are welcome in our circle. And you don't have to show up in any way. If you need to stim, if you need to step up, if you need to walk away, if you need to eat, if you need to turn your camera off, put headphones on, you are welcome to do that. This is a safe space to come as you are and take care of your needs. Um, this is also a place for Marina's. So let me actually formally introduce the circle. So Marina is going to be running a bi-monthly or every other week circle on Mondays in the collective, called Self-Alchemy, a co-working circle for sensitive self-healers. This circle is going to be structured in that there will be like sort of these defined topics, but it's also going to be unstructured. So Marina will have creative license over how she wants to run the group. And I'm sure she's always taking feedback from others and kind of feeling into what the group needs. So it will be structured, but it won't be so structured that it feels like you're boxed in. Um, this is a space for people who never finish workbooks. Maybe you get real excited, you buy yourself some kind of tool you want to play with, and then it gets lost somewhere, or you forget, or life picks up and you're just like, I don't have the space for this anymore, but you still, in your heart of hearts, want to do that work. You can come to this circle and bring your workbooks and do that work. You don't have to go along with what Marina's doing in circle that week. If you just want to turn your camera off, mute, and do your workbook, then you can do that. This also goes for journaling. You know, maybe you're a journaling person and you don't always make time for it. You can bring your journal. Um, if you're craving like more grounding, any of these skills we've talked about, softness, time to just tend to yourself, which is so hard these days because our schedules fill up quickly and our intentions compete with our life and the things that we have to do. So having that consistent time that you have blocked out for your nourishment and your inner tending can be so grounding. If you're looking for that, this circle is for you. If you're looking for community, this space is for you, and you just want to work on the growing and learning and becoming the next version of yourself in a community space. Okay. Is there anything else you would add as far as who this circle is for, Marina?
I think people looking for sisterhood and friendship as well. I think that's the only thing I would add.
Yes, I love that. Okay, so if that's you, if you're checking in with yourself right now and saying this is something I need and something I've been searching for, you are invited to join us in Circle. Our Marina's first circle will be Monday, December 1st at 6:30 Eastern Time. If you are not able to attend on Monday nights, you are welcome to join as a member of the Nourished Sensitive Collective, and you will receive the replay within 48 hours of the event. So you can still be there in spirit and do all the exercises and whatever feels good to you. Um, for guests, so all of our events are open. What I mean by that is you don't have to be a member to attend. If you are a guest in our circle, the cost to join is 22. Um, and that money goes towards growing this space. It goes towards the mission and the vision of the Nourished Sensitive, which you can read about on our website, nourishedsensitive.com. That money goes to paying our facilitators and the people that are contributing to this space. And it goes, of course, to supporting me as the founder of TNS and just upholding my life. And yes, those tickets go to good things. And the reason why I designed it this way, to be open instead of kind of that traditional membership model where it's open and then the doors close, is that I understand that we go through seasons. Sometimes we are part of a membership or a community and we are loving it for 3 months at a time. And then something happens, you know, we experience grief or we start a new job and we have to go. We can't commit to this anymore. I still want you to have that space available if you want to drop in, but you can't attend regularly. You're welcome to keep up your membership if you want to just support what we're doing here, but you don't have to. Now, if cost is an issue, send me an email, leah@nourishedsensitive.com. And everyone has a free invitation to join our circle the first time. If you just want to try it out or kind of feel in, you can just send me an email and I'll give you a coupon code to get your ticket for free. If cost is an ongoing issue, like you really want to be part of this, but you don't have the means, also send me an email and we'll talk about it. I really don't want anyone to be gated from this kind of community. If you are a member, So if you upgrade your subscription to be a paying member, we have 3 different tiers, and you can explore that on our Substack and on our website. You get access to all of our circles, all of our events as part of your membership. You get access to all the replays, which go live on Substack. You are investing in the future TNS magazine, which is so cool. I just announced this. We're going to be starting a magazine. Eventually, we'll have digital and print issues, but we need people to invest in that in order to make it happen. And you just get access to everything that we have talked about here: community, belonging, safety, healing, all the good things. Um, so I will leave it there. That is your invitation to join us in Circle if you've been craving this. You know what you need. Follow that impulse, follow that intuition. Okay, let's close this conversation, Marina, with maybe some intentions, maybe a prayer or a blessing or a closing thought for what we want people to take out of this conversation, and also for your group that you're going to be running, your circle.
Hey. Well, I think just the takeaway for anyone listening is you are not alone on this journey. If you are just starting out in learning self alchemy, in any way that feels good to you, whether or not you just started this kind of work or you've been walking this road alone for a long time, just know that there's a community, even beyond this smaller community, there's a community out there of all these people who are walking that road with you. And yeah, you don't have to do it alone anymore because everyone's ready. Everyone's ready to come together and do this work in community and to support each other. So, um, yeah, listen to your own inner guidance, your own gut feelings. Keep following that North Star of yours, and you're right where you need to be at exactly the right time.
Thank you, Marina. If you want to join us for Circle on December 1st or become a member, you can go to nourishedsensitive.com. You'll find our events page that will lead you to our event calendar. And you'll also find information about the membership that you can read through. And if you need to contact me, if you have any questions, send me an email. My email is on the website. I also have a contact form, and you can send me a message on Substack. There are many ways to reach Leah. Thank you so much for being here, Marina. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Laura, for joining. And we love you guys.
Yes, thank you for joining. Thank you for having me, Leah. This was fun.
Ciao.